Hello, Mr. Andy here. We're going to take a quick look at creating assemblies in SolidWorks. So right off the bat, I'm going to start a new file, and I will pick a metric assembly file. So we have an inch of metric assembly here at the college. And in the left-hand column, SolidWorks is asking me to select a component to insert. And you want to make sure when you bring in your first component that you bring in the base part, the base of the assembly, the base of the structure, the part that's never going to move, the part that establishes the orientation for all the other parts that are going to come in. We're going to use one of the sample files from SolidWorks, so I'm going to browse. And I'm going to go to T drive because that's where they're hanging out right now. And classes 194, and we'll go to the UV joint. Now the bracket is the main part that holds all the rest of the components, and so that's what I want to bring in as my base part. And what I'm about to do is really, in my mind, one of the most important steps of all in starting a assembly, and that's that the base part, except maybe in very unique situations, needs to be dropped on the origin of the assembly in order to lock it in place to the three principal planes. It sets up the orientation for the whole assembly. If you don't get it dropped on the origin, it's kind of floating free and you can actually spin the whole assembly, which we don't want to do. So if you watch my mouse, you can see I'm circling around the origin of the assembly. You can also see the origin of the part, which is kind of in the middle of that bottom fillet there. But watch what happens when I touch my mouse to the origin. The part snaps to the origin. And that's the behavior you want to see. So get that mouse, let it snap to the origin, and then click it in. Done all that right, you should see your bracket over here, and it should be fixed in place, and it should be oriented, and I should only see that one origin sitting there. All right, I need to go grab some more parts, so we're going to insert components up here, and we'll browse. I'm going to thumbtack this down because I have a bunch of components. I'm going to browse, and let's grab the crank arm. Now we'll change that in just a minute. I'm going to grab the yoke. We only need one of those. If I needed more, I could just click. That works when you have the thumbtack down. I'll browse for the female yoke and drop one of those. I will browse for the spider and drop one over here. I will browse for a pin. And I'm only going to drop one pin in. I'm actually going to need 3 of them, but I want to show you some other ways to duplicate parts. I could just click 3 times and put 3 pins in. And finally, I'm going to browse. The top of this assembly is actually has an assembly that is the crank arm and a knob put together already. But the default setting for SolidWorks when you're inserting is only to show part files. So to bring in an assembly file as a sub-assembly, you have to select assembly, or you could just leave yours set on all files. So I'm going to click on assembly and grab that crank arm assembly. Let's zoom out just a little bit, and we'll drop that out in space. And you can see that crank arm assembly is built out of 3 components. So it's actually a sub-assembly in this part. All right, have all my parts in. I want to start mating some of these parts up. So we're going to go to the mate tool. It's up here on the assembly toolbar. And I'm going to select the shank here, the cylindrical portion. And then I'm going to select the cylindrical portion of this hole. Do not pick edges in assembly unless that's absolutely what you want to do. Typically it leads to inappropriate mates because the part will be able to rotate. That's a 2-dimensional feature. We want to mate when we can 3-dimensional features. So a 3-dimensional cylindrical surface. And it's going to guess on the default mate that should be used in that instance. It pops up a little bar here. It's made it concentric. I can also do all this stuff over here. I'm just going to hit the check mark. Now, I want to mate this surface flush to the underside here. And we'll do that. It's coincident. We'll say yes. Please notice that this thing still spins. Okay, so I can turn it, but I can no longer move it up or down. And that's all the mates I need for this one. I'd actually like it to rotate. All right, I'm going to bring the spider in now. So let's create a mate. First of all, we'll make it concentric. So I'll grab that cylindrical surface and this cylindrical surface. Again, not the edge, but get that surface. And that makes them concentric. We'll click OK. Now you'll see that I can move the spider, but only along the axis of the part. All right, I'm going to take this face of the spider and mate it to the inside face of the yoke. And we'll hit OK. And now we should see that the spider is kind of locked in place here. It spins around with the yoke. All right, I want to get the female yoke mated in. I'm going to begin by making these concentric. We'll hit OK. Okay. Now it's concentric. And then likewise, we'll click this face and we'll spin around. You do a lot of spinning when you're mating components, so you'll be using that middle wheel quite a bit. We'll click on the back surface here and we'll hit OK. Now I want to get the female yoke pretty close to the position I want it in here. This is, when you do this assignment, a rather odd little mate. These two surfaces don't touch. So if you try to mate this surface to this surface, it's going to give you an error up here. It says that the default mate of coincident would overdefine the assembly. That's because there's a gap in there. So instead, I'm just going to make it parallel. And that will make SolidWorks happy. There's a very small gap in there. All right, well, let's deal with this pin now. First of all, I need another pin. So the quick way to do this is hold the control key down and then just click and drag on that pin. Whoops. We have to do that from Feature Manager now. Hold the control key down and I will find a pin here with the control key held down and drag it out, and that gives me a second one. And I'll do it one more time. Control drag. All right. Now I know it seems odd that I only have 3 pins, but we'll see in just a minute why. I'm going to mate 2 pins in to the female yoke on either side. So I'm going to take this surface, I'm going to click on mate, and then I'll pick this diameter, and that will line up concentric. I'll hit OK. Again, that pin is now concentric. Then I'm going to take this face and this face, which is curved, and make them tangent. And that's the way this component was designed to be done. I'm going to click on this face and this face and make them concentric. And I'd like to show you something that occurs occasionally, real quickly in SolidWorks. Every once in a while, when you hit OK to mate something and it moves it into place, it'll actually disappear inside the model and you won't be able to click on it. So I'd like to show you how to get it out of there if you need to. You find the envelope right there. See that pin number 2? There's pin 1, which is the first one. There's pin 2, which is stuck inside the part. It's only mated concentric, so it can move, but I just can't click on it to drag it. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to go up here and click on Move and just drag out. Because it was highlighted, it's selected when I do the Move Component tool. So you can try that if your part disappears. All right, now we're ready to mate finally. And let's cancel this. We'll just clear these. I want to take this surface and oops. Let's try that again. Mate this surface to this surface tangent. We'll hit OK. Now, you'll notice if I look through, I have an opening through the middle of my yoke, but I'd like to resolve that with a single pin. And it just so happens that this pin has multiple configurations, which we did last week. So we want to take care of that. So I'm going to click on this pin. I'm going to get out of the mate tool first of all. Click on this pin. Now I want to go to Properties. It's the little page here. And I want to use the long configuration, and I'll hit OK. So that's how you switch configurations. Now I'll mate this, so we'll go to the mate tool. And I will pick one of these inside surfaces. We'll make those concentric. And then this face to this face, tangent. All right, finally, our crank here. I'm going to move it kind of up into place here. So first of all, we're going to need a concentric mate. So we'll take the curved surface here, cylindrical surface, and the cylindrical surface here. We'll make them concentric. Then I'm going to take the flat here and the flat here, and we'll make those coincident. They happen to be plane on plane. If not, we'd have to make them parallel. What's funny now is that if I look at this, I can actually rotate the assembly because those flats are mated to each other, even though we don't have a mechanical connection yet. Finally, I want to position this vertically, so I'm going to mate the underside surface here to the top surface here. However, I don't want them to be flush. I want a gap in there. So I'm going to go to a distance mate. You can see where my mouse is. You can also do it over here in Feature Manager. I'm going to click on Distance, and I will put in, let's try 1 millimeter, and that gives me a 1 millimeter gap, and I'll hit OK, and then I will close the mate box. So let's zoom back out to a trimetric view, and now I should be able to spin my assembly. All the parts should stay in order. And if I click on any particular part and move, I shouldn't be able to like pull it out. That indicates that you're missing a mate. So there you have it. Assemblies and mates in SolidWorks. Enjoy.